Xavier, and I am the networks manager at the Commonwealth Local Government Forum. And on behalf of CLGF, I would really like to thank you all for joining us today. And in particular, I would like to, extend our sincere appreciation to Mutare City Council and especially Mr. Blessing Chafesuka, who's the town clerk, for agreeing to share Mutare's experience with us today. We also have Leopold Boroma, CLGF's project manager in Zimbabwe, who has been very closely supporting this work. And of course, all the colleagues from local authorities, from local government associations, ministries, research institutions, and partner organizations who have really taken the time to join us in this exchange. We're really delighted a lot to have a very strong, very kind of diverse group with us today. And I know that we have colleagues joining and continuing to join us from Zimbabwe, Botswana, Namibia, Uganda, Zambia, Sierra Leone, Nigeria, Cameroon, Togo, South Africa, and a wide range elsewhere. It's a very wide group that is participating, and it's very much in the spirit of the Commonwealth Sustainable Cities Network, which is really about creating some practical spaces for local governments to learn from one another on issues that matter directly to city governance, to municipal finance, and also to service delivery. So before we begin, just a few quick housekeeping points. We are aiming to keep the session today to 90 minutes. We will try to flow, and I will begin with a short introduction to the CSCN pilot on digital public financial management and why we are convening this exchange. I will then hand over to Leopold Boroma to help to set the scene and reflect on why digitalization matters so much for municipal revenue administration and public financial management. We will then hear from Mr. Chafesuka, who will take us through the Mutare experience in developing and how they implemented the local authorities' digital system, or also known as the LADS. And then we will move into an interactive discussion and questions for participants. So I'm asking everyone, you've done it so far, keep your mics muted, and we will come back to that session where you'll have an opportunity to speak. And if any questions occur to you, even during Leopold's remarks or during the Mutare presentation, please hold them for the discussion session, or it's very useful if you can drop them in the chat as they arise. We'll keep an eye on the chat, and of course, we'll group any questions that are very useful and make sure that we try to address them. So please do use the chat actively, particularly if you prefer not to come in verbally later on. Okay, we are recording this session, so of course we will share it with you later on, and looking forward to a fantastic session. So, by way of context, this session sits within the work of the Commonwealth Sustainable Cities Network, or the CSCN, which is CLGF's platform for peer exchange and for collaboration in sustainable urbanization across the Commonwealth. One of the core ideas behind the CSCN is that local governments often learn best from other local governments that are really grappling with similar realities, similar fiscal pressures, similar institutional constraints, similar service delivery demands, and often you have similar political or even administrative environments. And that is the thinking that also reflects CLGF's wider city-to-city partnership approach, which has long recognized that practical exchange between local authorities can often unlock learning in a way that is a lot more grounded, that can also kind of be not so abstract in terms of that technical advice alone. When one council can speak directly to another about what it has tried, about what has worked, what did not work, how it kind of secured buy-in, what sort of resistance it faced, and how long change may have taken, that has really been seen to be very powerful a tool. So today's session, the purpose of it is not to really present Mutare as a perfect model that you can copy wholesale. It would be nice, but we don't intend to suggest that. It's also not to suggest that every city needs to adopt exactly the same system or even to follow exactly in the same pathway. Instead, we really want to aim to create a practical space where a city that has made real progress is able to now share what problem they were trying to solve, what steps they took, what changed as a result of that, and what lessons other councils might want to take from that experience and adapt to their own context. That is pretty much the spirit in what today's clinic is really kind of focusing on. Our clinic also forms a part of the CSCN pilot on digitalization for municipal revenue administration and public financial management in Southern Africa. I know it's a lot to say, but it's some serious work we're doing with the Southern African grouping, which CLGF is currently developing with a small peer cluster of councils and with local government associations. The broad purpose of the pilot is to support practical peer learning and exchange around how digital tools and reforms can actually strengthen core municipal financial systems, particularly in such areas like revenue administration and collection, in areas like arrears and debtor management, records and billing integrity, financial reporting and audit readiness, procurement and internal controls, citizen-facing payment and accountability systems, and of course, the wider governance arrangements that help finance, ICT, and leadership to work together in a much more effective way. Importantly, it is also not a funding program, and I do need to state that it's not a project through which CLGF is installing any systems within councils. Instead, what we're doing is a pilot that is intended to help local authorities to be able to learn from one another, to reflect on what is realistically possible within their own context, to be able to identify any practical reforms and any next steps, and where it's useful, to develop or to strengthen their own action pathways for the digital public financial management reform. And I should say that the registrations for today's session, thank you so much, all of you, for registering. What you have shared in that registration has reinforced how relevant this topic actually is. Some of the really strong areas of interest that you indicated you wanted to hear about included revenue collection systems and that same arrears and debtor management, the payment platforms and payment reconciliation, ERP and integrated municipal systems. Some were asking for financial reporting and information about audit readiness, governance between the ICT and finance, and how to manage change, and also how to manage staff buy-in. So we will try our very best through both the presentation and the discussion later on to draw out as much practical lessons and as much learning as possible on those issues. Okay. So before we hear from Mutare, we thought it would be very useful to spend a few minutes just grounding this discussion in the broader context of municipal finance and digitalization within the region. And to do that, I'm very pleased to hand over to Leopold Buruma, who is our project manager for CLGF in Zimbabwe, who has been very closely engaged in this work and is supporting all of you and in supporting local government reform processes very broadly in general. Leopold will kind of help to set the scene on why digitalization matters so much for municipal revenue administration and public financial management, and why this is really becoming an increasingly important topic on the agenda for local governments across the region. Leo, over to you.
Thank you so much, Janine. It's my pleasure to welcome all the participants that are here to this very, very important session. I have prepared a 1-hour sermon. But then I realized that I'm already speaking to the converted. So many people have registered here to hear Mutare speak. Less than hear us. The only point that I want to make before I hand over to Blessing is digitalization is no longer an option in terms of the financial sustainability of a city, a local authority. So yes, we used to have options in terms of whether we want to digitalize or not. Efficient modern management requires that we deploy digital tools to make our local authorities more efficient and not to deny residents and citizens the development that they require because we are not deploying financial management and fiscal capacity enhancement instruments. So digitalization should be viewed from that perspective, that it's a sure way of connecting the local authorities with their citizens in terms of deploying tools that would enhance and make our local authorities more effective. I would want to leave most of the time to Mutare to hear their case of how a local authority transformed itself through deployment of digital instruments and how it then managed to reconnect itself with its citizens and make it relevant within the geographical space that they are operating with, and how they managed to reduce conflicts between them and their citizens, and also become a growing town. A growing town, not geographically, but also growing institutionally. So sometimes we grow geographically and weaken institutionally, which would then disconnect us with our residents and cause a lot of apathy and disengagement. So digitalization can transform us from being failed communities to a more engaged, elaborate, and development communities. I'll leave this session to the town clerk so that we hear more of what we came into this session for. Thank you very much. Janine.
Thank you so much, Leo, for setting the context. Clearly, tight, and in your usual style. But generally, I think, the general remarks, they really underline why this discussion, it really matters. Because for many of the local governments, the challenge is not really just actually about technology. It is also about how the councils can strengthen the systems that underpin that, the revenue that you have, the accountability, some of your financial controls, service delivery, public trust. And with that in mind, it gives me very great pleasure to introduce our main speaker for today's clinic, Mr. Blessing Chafesuka, the town clerk of Mutare City Council in Zimbabwe. Mutare's experience is particularly valuable because it really shows what can happen when a council treats digital reform not just like as a side project, but more as part of a broader institutional transformational journey. And the presentation today will take us through that journey, show us some of the improvements. And before I hand over, just to remind all of you as participants, if you have any questions during this presentation, again, please feel free to place them in the chat as they arise, or if you want to hold them for the discussion segment afterwards, that's also fine. Mr. Chafesuka, thank you so much again for joining us, and the floor is now yours.
Thank you very much. My appreciation to COGF, project manager, Mr. Paroma, and the whole team from COGF for giving us this opportunity to share our experiences as a city in Zimbabwe, having gone through this, transformation journey, mainly backed by ICT reforms, digitalization. So, as he introduced, my name is Kapuya Blessing Chafesuka, the town clerk for City of Mutare. I come from finance. Finance is my background. Yes, now I'm doing more of political management, but I've lived much of my life in in finance. So it was, also an advantage coming into this project to try and blend ICT interventions and financial management. So if you can bring up my slides, please. Yes, next. Next slide. Hello. So our journey, our last journey began in the year 2029, and we are still, developing solutions in the current year. But we launched this in the 2019 year, and we were getting support from COGF. Then the focus was to just develop databases for several of our management areas, and it was predominantly covering modules that were in finance. The first module was for debt tracking. We were facing serious challenges in coming up with a solution to track, debtors, and we then developed a solution via an MOU that we signed with Harare Institute of Technology, which is a local university, with support from COGF. We developed a debt tracking module. It significantly improved our collection levels. And from then, we started to roll out other modules with other departments. It was now graduating from being predominantly a finance department system. We realized there were, significant improvements that were coming directly from solutions that we had introduced. And as we were rolling out, we then motivated our issue, and the council accepted that we come up with a full-time large research lab, fully funded by the city of Mutare, but with software engineers that were coming from Harare Institute of Technology. We have developed so many modules now. We are standing at 47 modules, which include parking solution, HR management modules, and business licensing modules. Even our internal communication, our internal memos are now digital. So the system has evolved significantly, and we are at that stage where we want it to be a full ERP for management of city service delivery activities across all departments. Next slide. So, yes, there are challenges, significant challenges that we were facing then, and we have significantly improved from the status quo then. The major highlights being collection efficiency. In 2019, we were averaging 33% collection efficiency, and that poor revenue performance had far-reaching implications in terms of compromising service delivery. We were using manual systems, and a lot of fake receipts were being used by our employees, and some were actually being generated by some who were actually out of the council system. We were not getting enough from our parking in markets. As a city, we have a lot of activity in markets, and it's one of our cash cows. But we were not generating much from these markets. And also, we were facing serious resistance from ratepayers. For several years, we had battles, court legal battles with residents associations, where they were challenging our budgets, where they were challenging, a lot of activities within the council, and the credibility of our tariffs. So yeah, that was another major issue. And we also had serious issues in terms of governance, particularly relating to audit. In the past years, we had, thick volumes of management letter, where we were getting, a lot of audit observations. But with the introduction of floods, the digitalization program, we have realized that our management letter is shrinked significantly. I think it's actually less than 5% of what it used to be then. And we used to have, a lot of issues around missing vouchers, those documents that you use to prove payments. But with digitalization, we have not been able to miss any voucher in the recent audits, and we are able to, to justify all expenses that would have incurred. A lot of file pilferage was, very prevalent, where, files relating to land sales would just disappear. And as a result, the local authority would lose a lot of cases in our courts because of this problem. Next slide. We had salary arrears, the worst case being, some employees being owed as high as 5 years salary backlog. We had issues with the tax authority. We could not pay our statutory obligations on time. We could not pay our pensions on time. And, morale was very low. Frequent challenges relating to employee management, a lot of public complaints. When you don't pay your employees on time, they also they find ways of also remunerating themselves, and that then compounds your problem as a local authority. It was not even easy to recruit, competent staff because of that background where you don't pay your salaries on time. Land management, this is a big issue, and a lot of leakages were experienced via mismanagement of land. Land is a resource that is at the center of local authority management, and failure to come up with a proper system can create a lot of problems in terms of leakages. We had stands that were being sold to, one stand being sold to multiple buyers. And a lot of legal, cases came out from this weakness. Then we also had issues with poor service delivery. When you fail to collect, when the residents lose confidence, they don't pay. And when they don't pay, it then reflects on the service that you provide to the community. So we had issues across all service delivery areas: refuse collection, sporting facilities. Some sporting facilities had been neglected for more than 2 decades. If we're failing to provide, consistent water supply and sewer services. Our roads were, in a very bad shape. So that's about poor service delivery. Next slide. So revenue collection improvement was a key improvement in this digitalization drive. For example, from our markets, where we were collecting an average of 23,000 per month for our markets, we can now collect plus or minus 40,000 per month. And we have changed from the manual cash collection system, and with the digitalization, we've been able to close a lot of, leakage points. And we have improved in terms of discipline, even amongst our employees. The billing of our markets is such that even the market traders actually trust the system. We all have our traders now registered within the large system. The billing is automated, and the revenue tracking is actually in real time, and we can actually produce management reports to manage these areas. With licensing, whilst we have not yet completed the full digitalization, because there are other processes which require physical visits, but we have been able to reduce human interaction between our officers and the traders, and it has significantly reduced the incidences of corruption. Debt tracking We still have challenges relating to integration of systems, but with the use of a system, we are able to get reminders. Whenever people register payment plans with us, the system can easily track those payment plans, and it has significantly improved our revenue collection. Next slide. Yes, again, in terms of cost containment, one of the major advantages relates to management of costs. While its revenue collection is significantly improved, but the other major advantage is that we've also been able to reduce costs in a number of areas through use of digital systems. For example, fuel is now requested and approved within the system in real time. And the system can flag where there are double requests for a single vehicle. When we initially deployed this system, we realized that there was a refuse truck, for example, which was claiming fuel 3 times higher than other similar trucks. And over time, it created discipline within the system. Procurement, again, this is quite a sensitive area. And, the use of a system has greatly assisted us in terms of improving procurement systems, complying with the statutory requirements around procurement. It also talks to stores management. You can issue your stock items, you can accept your stock items, track balances in real time, and it's easier to come up with reconciliations. And from those reconciliations, again, we've been able to reduce costs. And we are also able to track, implementation of the budget through an analysis of the actual against the budgeted. And we are able to then, make corrections ahead of, serious misuse of resources. Asset register module, again, in terms of reporting, this is a major one. We've also been able to, control the use of our assets by having, systems that track acquisition and disposal, and we can easily account for most of our assets. And you can see from this that there has been, impact. Even when you talk of budgeting, it's actually very easy now to do budgets because I can forecast consumption of fuel per department, per section, per individual officer, and even to narrow it down to an individual vehicle. So it's very easy, even to budget for travel allowance because that's a significant cost line. I can estimate the cost that relates to each officer per year right from the system because of digitalization. Next slide. So it has helped us in terms of improving accountability and transparency. Like I highlighted initially, our management letter is shrink significantly, and even the audit opinions have improved. This year, we've just concluded our audit for the previous year. We are now able to submit our financial statements within the statutory deadline of 60 days into the year because our systems are now mostly digital. I've already highlighted the issue on audit, on vouchers, stand allocations, and the drastic reduction of instances of corruption. And generally, our records are now secure and we can easily track them. Our files, we are scanning all our old files, and we are resorting to use of digital files. And it's easier to refer these and to track where they are. And it's now easy again to prepare reports as and when these are required. As a local authority, we report to central government, we report to different stakeholders, and these reports are demanded, without notice in many instances. And because of use of systems, we are able to prepare our reports on time. Next. Records management, like I highlighted, we are digitalizing our records, and it is now, becoming a solution in terms of loss of records. Even if we are to experience a fire incident at the head office, we know our documents are safe in cloud. And, some records are very sensitive. HR records, asset records. I remember at one time with one person who came in with grave reservation requests. They wanted to bury their loved one after having registered for a grave reservation several years back. But we had lost the records, and even our employees were also taking advantage of that, and they were selling these graves which were already under reservations. And you can see the kind of challenges that it creates for a local authority. So the digitalization of our systems is actually coming very handy, and we are applying and deploying resources to this as a deliberate strategy to manage the local authorities. Next. Citizen engagement, this has also been our major strength. Via use of digital systems, we used to experience serious challenges when it comes to mobilizing stakeholders or our ratepayers to attend meetings with the local authorities. We could do advertise on the radio, use flyers, advertise in the newspaper, even send messages with our councillors to spread the message for consultation or just engagement meetings. And the attendance was very, very low. In particular for budget consultation meetings, there are times that we could do hardly, bring together 300 people to discuss the budget over 2 months. A total of less than 300 people would attend our budget consultation meetings. And it was not a good reflection of the budget, because having 300 people to decide for a city with almost 300,000 residents is not representative at all. So we then developed a solution via chatbot, WhatsApp chatbot. We also developed and linked it to Google Forms, and we created forms, consultation forms, which we developed with key stakeholders that were drawn by residents themselves via their, separate groups, informal traders, business community, the youth, the women. We asked them to select one of them to come and be part of the budget, the stakeholder committee. And with this group, we developed these forms. When we deployed these forms through WhatsApp groups, our numbers significantly jumped from as low as 300, 400, 500 to our last year number, which was above 20,000. And this actually improved our relations with the residents. And for the past 2 years, we have not been receiving any objections from residents when we present our budgets, which was not happening before. So again, in terms of engaging in stakeholders, we developed a customer relations module through which residents can log any query they have, and it goes via that system. Our public relations sections then directs queries to the specific departments that can then attend to those issues, and we also give feedback through that same platform. Next slide. So now, even getting budget approvals with central government is becoming easier. For the first time in as many years, we got our budget approved in January. At times, budget approvals would come around end of first quarter. And it then helps us to bill and collect revenue earlier into the year. And it has improved transparency. Residents actually, liked this platform, and they gave us, their input. And there was, high levels of approvals measured by the system itself. While we have a small group, the observation is there's a small group that may be very loud in terms of talking and representing residents. But when we put this to the public, the responses that were coming were actually surprising, because our observation is now there is a bigger group that is not very loud in terms of participating. But when we gave them the digital platform, they were able to, to give us their voice, and we were surprised that we were getting rating as high as 70 to 76% from stakeholders, and with no budget objections. Next slide. So, as you can see, the direction there, from 33% in 2019, currently we are at 65% in 2026. And at times we can get even up to 80% in some months, but the average is 65%. And we have cleared our audit backlogs. We are in current, and our statutory payments are also in current, and we pay on time. No budget objections, and there is credit worthiness. For the past 3 years, we've been able to access loans with full support from central government, Ministry of Finance, because of this improvement that we have registered as a seat. Next slide. So we are saying infrastructure requires funding. Improving service delivery requires funding, and the funding can only be mobilized if residents have confidence. Putting together resources from taxes is not easy, but we have seen that positive direction. And you can see how we have improved in terms of infrastructure and equipment. Now we can collect refuse on schedule every month, every day, every week. We have enough trucks for refuse collection. We now have 3 ambulances, which we did not have. We're relying entirely on private sector. We have 7 fire trucks from 3 in 2021. We now have the water bowsers. We are a city where on average, most of our townships, they get water 24 hours per day, except for a few dysfunctional areas, which then dilute our performance. But we are doing very well from an average of 14 hours in the year 2019. We are hitting 24 hours in most of our suburbs. And we are constructing schools. Before, the previous 5 years, we were saying our local authority only had 4 schools, but we are now constructing our 8th school. So it's more like we're delivering a school every year. And our community really appreciates this. We are constructing clinics fully funded from the local authority coffers. We have been able to refurbish stadiums that had been neglected for some time. Our swimming pool was not functional. One of our swimming pool was not functional for almost 2 decades. We are providing, markets for our informal traders. And all this, we see it as positive development coming directly from the interventions that are digital in nature is implemented by the city. Next. And these are the key milestones. I have already talked to the improvement in collection, the rapid response. I think we are actually able to match the international standard when it comes to rapid response for fire emergencies. And for water, our average, although diluted by some dysfunctional settlements, is 22 hours, but most of our suburbs are actually enjoying water 24/7. Next slide. Yes, there were challenges along the way. It's not easy, to introduce a system that can be so disruptive. The culture, changing the culture was a process, and it demanded firm leadership. And at times, relations had to go sour. I remember at one point I instructed that for those who want to procure, this was directly for directors, those who want to procure, if you are not going to bring your issues on the digital system, I was not approving. Because, when you start to initiate a system, there are always bugs. And if you then follow and then, respect those bugs, what it means is you will not deploy the system. So we're able then to work with the bugs, perfect the system, and gradually everyone now enjoys the system. Again, ICT hardware is not cheap. We appreciate the support that we got from CLGF, but we also as a city had to channel a significant budget to supporting procurement of ICT hardware infrastructure. And informal traders, there was pushback from informal traders because, initially they were working together with some of our employees to bypass our manual system. But when we first introduced the revenue collection through the digital system, it created accounts which no one could tamper with. And, every time there was a bug or a challenge, they would want, they say, we don't want this system. But now they are used to it, and it has strengthened our revenue collection. Yes, with any system, you also get to have employees who try to manipulate the system. But with the digital system, the good thing is there's always a digital footprint. So, initially, we had employees who were trying to bypass the system, they were trying to exploit the system. But this has since stopped because we are also strengthening on the security part of the system. And every time anyone tried to tamper with the system, we would easily, track. And the issue of knowledge silos. This relates to operational bottlenecks across, staff. We made sure that we also channeled a significant part of our budget to training our employees so that they appreciate the system and it's very user-friendly. Next slide. I have already highlighted the issue of bugs and the issue of skills flight. It was a serious issue because of limited resources. The software engineers are, in high demand. So we were becoming a training ground. We produce good softwares. The young engineers, the next thing they are taken by other, well-resourced institutions. But with the improvement in revenue collection, I must say that we have also significantly improved the conditions of service for our employees. And I can safely say we are now very stable in this area. And at times, we would also experience network downtime. I think it's common with any system, but, we have learned to live with it. So, resistance is a signal. It's not a stop sign. we need to work with it. In-house infrastructure gives control. When you develop a system that is talking to your needs, it will give you, results. While it cannot be completely perfect, but it will be far much better than buying from a system that is off the shelf. We have lived this journey, and I can assure you that when you develop a system whose modules are developed by the users, it will be the best system that can deliver results better than an off-the-shelf system. Yes, you need to invest in security because, we have young men who are very sharp, and they can, come up with serious breaches to the system. We have taken this direction, and we've said we are not going back. We've challenged everyone to come up with the proposals to improve the system, although bugs may be there. But certainly, if you pursue this direction, it pays dividends, and it requires leadership. It's not an easy thing, but you need to have firm leadership to ensure that everyone plays ball. There will be resistance because bringing in these systems will close opportunities for siphoning resources from the local authorities, and it's not everyone who will be happy to have these systems. So it requires that firm leadership to ensure that it works. Next slide. So I've already talked to the issue of leadership, partnerships. In our case, we're working with the COGF and the Harare Institute of Technology, very powerful partnership, and also Gender Links, VEI and GIZ. They also came in very handy to support development of some of these modules. You also, when you make money, you should also remember those who are producing the results. So we've also taken it as a deliberate move to ensure that when we collect and when we are recognized as the best performing, we also celebrate those with the employees who are delivering those results. And the stakeholders buy-in is very important. We have made sure that they are part of the journey along the way. Even if you walk into our streets, those who work with our local authority, although they cannot, articulate what large is, but they appreciate the direction that we are taking towards the digitalization of our systems. And of course, we work within the confines of government policy, which gives us, the overall direction. Next. For sustainability, this is about the future. It's about, I've highlighted that we want it to be an ERP. We want to integrate with GIS, which is also a digital platform. Smart metering, we've already started testing the use of smart meters, and which will also reduce costs significantly for us from the preliminary results that we are seeing. And from this system, the use of this system, we've realized that we are putting together a lot of data, and now we are investing in upskilling our staff so that we can be able to mine that data and come up with the analytics that inform decision making. And with the improvement of revenues, we should surely focus on road rehabilitation. Roads are our major weak point as a city. We are not doing well in that space. I think conversations are around how we can, come up with a different funding model. But as a city, this is our major weak point. We also want to come up with solutions that are environmentally friendly, and we need systems that can also support internal security and audit. As a city, we are currently working on transformation. It's a transformation project where we are saying, let's look at where we are in all service delivery areas, in the way are we supposed to be as a city in each service delivery area, and how then do we work towards achieving the ideal situation. So yes, we hope this project, city transformation, including ICTs, will surely transform the city. Next. So I think this is just a summary of issues that I've already talked to: the improvement in governance generally, the improvement in internal controls and financial discipline, the stability that is coming through evidence-based budgeting. It's no longer thumb-sucked. Improved, obviously, there's improved service delivery, and we have consistently in the past 3 years the past 3 years, we were rated as the third best performing local authority in Zimbabwe. Last year, we were rated the second best performing local authority. And this year, we were then rated the best performing local authority, urban local authority in Zimbabwe. So it's actually coming from the interventions that we are implementing, and these interventions are predominantly digital, ICT-driven solutions. Next slide. I want to thank you very much. This is my presentation. Like Dear Janine highlighted, this is not a solution that is cast in stone and a one-size-fits-all, but it's a good learning point. We are not yet where we want to be. There's a lot that we've programmed in terms of implementing ICT-driven solutions, but we believe we are in that right direction. And like Leo highlighted initially, the use of digital solution is no longer an option. Otherwise, if you want to collapse your local authority, ignore digitalization. Thank you very much.
Thank you so very much, Mr. Chafesuka. Very rich, very insightful, and very practical. Extremely.
I hope I was within time.
Perfection. You are the number one council, and you're showcasing timeliness, and everything is in order. Thank you so much. I think it was very, very insightful. A lot of simple things that made significant changes. Even just hearing the transformation from the numbers, just from standing your ground on certain positions. And you talked about the loudest voices usually being the ones that direct actions, and so much information was lost from only focusing on them. But when you opened it up, there was so much more rich information about what the council, what your residents want and need, and so much rich information in there, and it really helps in what you're saying to kind of move this whole conversation, like away from digital transformation and into that kind of practical realities of what local government reform actually looks like. The revenue problems that are being solved, the controls that you had to put in place, some of the records that were being secured. You talked about the resistance that had to be managed, and also some of that institutional discipline that you needed to make sure it stuck. Right? So there was a lot in the presentation, and I know that some questions have started coming in the chat, and I would like now to kind of open the floor for discussion. And you can raise your hand, and there are also some questions in the chat. So I'm going to go straight away to the first questions that I'm seeing in the chat. We have something from Mpunzi. I hope I pronounced your name correctly. The question was, what are the highest impact digital reforms that a municipality with limited financial resources should prioritize first, and why?
Sorry, can you come again?
What are the highest impact digital reforms, the most important digital reforms that a municipality who has very limited financial resources, what should they prioritize first, and why should they probably prioritize those things first?
Okay, so from City of Mutare, the bias was initially to strengthen revenue collection systems. Besides coming up with digital solutions, we also said let's resource the revenue enforcement teams so that we create stability in terms of resourcing. But at the same time, it has to work with controls. It's one thing to collect resources, but it's a completely different thing, deployment of those resources. So you also need to, as a parallel system, to come up with systems that control deployment of resources, particularly relating to, avoiding leakages, the prevalence of leakages. So from City of Mutare, these were the major areas that we focused on. The rest were then fitting in.
Janine, I can also come in and add to what Blessing has said. Digital solutions can be very low cost. We have even worked with local authorities that are in worse off situation. The most important, the decision that working as COGF and working with local authorities in Zimbabwe was to identify actually that aspect, that local authorities don't have enough resources to buy bigger ICT solutions. So let's come up with homegrown solutions. And the most important part was to unbundle the ICT solutions, that you then unbundle the modules and then pick up a module that answers to one of your biggest challenge. The one that either connects you with revenue or the one that connects you with your residents. So what is important within your municipality is to identify a tipping point. What is it that we can focus on that can then trigger change? So you might not need to start very big, but you are saying, like what Blessing is saying, if revenue collection is your weakest point, then just focus on that aspect. Pay all your attention. Then you see that it can then trigger bigger improvements. So I would encourage that identify your tipping point and then work on that particular tipping point, which will then lead to broader changes. Because and it will address that problem of you not having adequate resources. So look at that which will give you adequate resources, then trigger bigger changes. Thank you.
Thanks, Leo, for that input as well. It's practical. I want to go straight into the second question that I'm seeing coming forward as well. What governance structures should management establish to ensure that digitalization strengthens accountability rather than simply just automating existing inefficiencies?
Okay. In terms of governance structures, for us, I'll be sharing our experience, which obviously may not, may not be the same with other jurisdictions. But with us, we came up with a team, a committee that was reviewing progress in terms of implementation of floods. That team was responsible for getting requests of ICT solutions, which were coming from different sections. And it was responsible for also monitoring the development of ICT solutions and the deployment. And then certification before the system is deployed. We had a system where we required certification of those systems. And it was being done through that committee, working together with our IT section. Also, We also identified champions within different departments who were supposed to, to take the lead in terms of coming up with, solutions that relate to their departments. We also developed standard operating systems, SOPs, that were guiding how to develop solutions that that are based, that are ICT based. So in terms of a governance structure, that is what we did. Yes, it can create, delays in some instances in terms of implementation, but it helps you to close, gaps that may exist when you are developing an ICT solution. And besides this, we also recruited an external expert to come and validate, solutions that had been developed before deployment, especially for the core module, which is the most sensitive one. We had to look for an expert who is independent to come and then, review the system before deployment.
Okay. Just to add, yes, people talk of structures. To me, the most important governance structure that you can create is to have a committed and focused leader at the top. There's no another structure, because the structure exists if there's leadership commitment, which I think Blessing is not beating his chest. He's being modest about it. It needs a committed leader and sometimes a little bit of brutality in terms of not giving people options. That's the most important structure, rather than building committees, whatever structure. If there is no strong leadership at the top and committed, focused leader, and like what you also said, change agents are also very important. People who have committed themselves. I've worked with Mutare, sorry, I have seen that even the heads of departments are so committed that they have taken this system to be theirs rather than to be an organizational system. It's that ownership is the most important structure. And it's also important to start by, rather than completely moving away to a new system, start by automating what you're already doing. It enhances staff commitment in that you're just simply digitalizing their day-to-day work and then improve thereon. If it is a complete departure from what they are doing, it can cause a lot of challenges. So those could be my solutions. But leadership commitment and is critical, and not giving people options, like what he said, that when system fails, you are giving people option to go back to the inefficiencies and stuff like that. No matter how difficult, just that there's no going back in terms of adopting a digital path. That would make the whole intervention successful. Thank you.
Thanks, both of you. In other words, we need different levels of structures at all points, leadership committees, champions. Nothing actually is able to go forward without that kind of multi-level, multi-sectoral. And I mean, that's even part of the whole reason why we try to encourage, ICT and finance and leadership, combining the heads together to make any kind of level of success possible. Going to some questions. Richard Okuku, I saw you raise your hand initially, but then it dropped. I just want to check if you did have a question now. You can unmute yourself.
Thank you. Thank you, Xavier. And thank you. You've done a good job, Town Clerk KB. One, I think for me, this is impressive, considering the journey that you've made, and I see quite a number of modules that you have in there. The question of leadership, I think, is critical, and you are taking the lead. Plus your political team. I hope your political team is as supportive as the technical lead. And so one of the what is keenly interesting is the fact that you as a local government, you've actually been able to access loans as a result of growing your own source revenue portfolio. So you are able to access loans, and we have had challenges in Uganda, and I think we need to learn from you on how you've been able to convince the central government to allow you to access loans from the commercial banks, because it's something that is very difficult for the local governments in Africa. And then the other aspect is the WhatsApp chatbot. Very impressive idea. Oftentimes, we do not have interactions with the citizens, providing feedback on what they feel about the taxes we collect from them and how we are spending the money they send through, to facilitate the services. I have seen quite a number of improvements in service delivery areas that you mentioned in your presentation, and I think that's incredible. And the fact that you are able to get feedback from the citizens, and I hope that the citizens are able to receive feedback in real time, or where feedback is known to them, they are promised that after 24 hours we should be able to get back to you regarding the matter that you probably had issues around. So, and I think that's commendable. Lastly, on I think one on salary payments, because I think one of the challenges you raised previously, you had issues with areas on pay as you earn, and then the pension, and I think the National Social Security Agency, something like that. So you had some backlogs. And I'm wondering, one of my questions is, how do you manage issues of salaries? Because here in Uganda, I think almost to local government staff are paid by the central government. They come from the consolidated fund. So in this case, when you raise your own source revenue, are you able to spend it on salaries and then also be able to spend it on pension? So that is something that I think remained a bit unclear to me, how you manage. Otherwise, it's a good presentation, and it is something worth sharing with other African cities, municipalities, and districts. Thank you so much. Over to you, Xavier.
Thank you so much, Richard. And I want to hand back over to you, Mr. Chafesuka, in case you have feedback in terms of some of those questions he had on the journey, on, the own source revenue, on the WhatsApp chat, that approach, or even on the salary payments and on that. Do you have anything you want to respond there on?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, in Zimbabwe, we have a different setup. Each local authority is given authority to collect local taxes, and it should survive from those taxes for everything. Although we also get devolution funds from central government, but those are predominantly for capital projects when they are deployed. So much of 90% of our budget is from own resources that we collect as the local authorities, and it is from those resources that you should then manage all affairs of the local authority. And yes, when the local authority was experiencing backlogs, it was because it was not collecting enough and it was failing to provide those services. So yeah, it has been a journey, clearing backlogs of 5 years, and to come to a state where you pay on time for current. Yeah, it was quite a journey. And now we are now getting clean audits. All our schools are now, consolidating their reports with the city council. And yeah, we also get so much support from our political, leaders, our councillors, to be specific. They support us. As management, our role is to come up with the proposals, policies, and it is council which then resolves these into resolutions that we implement. So we have so much support from our political leadership. Oh yes, and on the issue of loans, yeah, it's not easy. It's not just in Uganda, everywhere, even in Zimbabwe here, you have to justify to central government. In our case, we have to justify to the residents first. We should publish our intention to borrow to the residents in a public newspaper, and we should allow residents for about 30 days the opportunity to review proposals for which we want to borrow and fund the projects. So after that, we should then justify to our parent Ministry of Local Government, and if they are happy, it is then taken to the Ministry of Finance, and it actually involves the central bank and the government lawyer is called Attorney General. They are all involved in the process of approving. So it's not an easy process. You need to have up-to-date accounts. You need to be servicing your prior year loans. You need to have audited accounts. There's a whole checklist that you have to comply with. And as a city, we are able to access loans every year, fortunately. And it then speaks to the improvement in service delivery.
Thanks so much, Blessing. I'm going to go straight to the next person. I can see, just so you know, I'm seeing Venatus, I'm seeing Tony, I'm seeing Tawanda, and Oscar. I saw your questions in the chat. So straight to the next question, which is Venatus Okafor. The floor is open for you.
Yeah, good afternoon. Can you hear me? Let me start by
there is some feedback.
Hold on. Actually, you can hear you again. Can you hear me, please?
Yes. Who's speaking? Is this Venatus or is another speaker?
Yeah, my name is Venatus Oka from
Okay, yes, we can hear you. Go ahead.
I want to thank not only for the presentation he has given. I would like to know the level of support or assistance he has gotten from the government leadership of his country to be able to achieve all the milestones of what has been elaborated. Because I can see we are targeting on what you have presented to align with 2030 and all others. So how has he been able to get to this level? What support has he gotten from the leadership? I would like to know that. Thank you very much.
I mean, you weren't as clear in terms of the reception, but let me know if I'm right. You're asking about what level of support and what support they received from government or from other external bodies, etc., for this to help implement the LAT. Is that what you're asking?
Yes.
Okay. Mr. Chafesuka.
Okay, so from central government, we, as local authorities, we operate under the parent ministry, the Ministry of Local Government. And particularly for this project, I think the ministry acknowledged that there is progress that we have registered as a local authority, and the digitalization drive was predominantly recognized by central government. There was no financial support, but the ministry kept encouraging other federal local authorities to see how they can also take learning points from our project. But we operate under a whole of government approach in Zimbabwe currently. So collaborating with the Harare Institute of Technology, which is a state-owned entity, is also part of government support, where the act is very clear that investors are there to come up with solutions that should impact our society. And we took advantage of that. We did not go to tender to engage our Institute of Technology because we are empowered in terms of the Act. So that's, I think, another level of support that we got to partner with the State Invest. If we had hired a private company to do this for us, it was going to be extremely expensive and beyond our capacity to fund.
Thanks for that feedback. I think it was clear. And whole of government support and trying to get support from every different area that you can as well. It's part and parcel of learning and being able to, make the most of what you're able to do there. I was supposed to also mention, I know from the previous speaker, you asked about own revenue, that sort of own source revenues. And just for the knowledge of participants here, CLGF has recently completed some work in partnership with other colleagues around urban finance and things around own source revenue. And there's quite significant bit of work that has been done. So look out on the CLGF pages for information on how to support local authorities in the different stages in developing responses in terms of urban finance. With that, let me go to the next question. The next person who raised their hands, I see Tony Enua from Algon. The floor is yours if you still wish to ask.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I also dropped the question on the chat, but let me ask. My question is, Mr. Chafesuka. In your presentation, you spoke about challenges. So I want to pick on the first one. Yes. And how did you overcome that first challenge? And how did you manage your upscaling of your staff? What were the various capacity development processes that was used? Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, this one is not an easy one, I can tell you. And, a time prepared for, the worst, like even casualties. I remember when this project started, when I was with another local authority, there was one guy who had joined that local authority before I was even born. He was still working in finance using manual systems. So when I said, let's introduce a digital system, he came to me and said, you know what, my son, you are my son. I appreciate the efforts that you are putting to improving the systems of this local authority. But at my age, I cannot start to learn computers. The best thing that I could do for the old man was to recommend a good exit package for him, because he had, with the manual systems, he had done very well. But, unfortunately, the systems had to be implemented. So at times you have to make those painful decisions. And along the way, there can be casualties. And when I also highlighted that there was a time when I said, if you want to procure, you have to come through the system with its bugs. We'll correct those as we go. There was a serious resistance. And I had to whip, my staff into line. So, it's part of changing a culture. It's not easy. It also involves training. We invested a lot in training, showing people the direction that we want to take, the advantages of it, the beauty of implementing these systems, not only to the local authority, but, to individuals. So it was a process, which involved even, bringing in the HR team to help us, navigate through. So yeah, it was not an easy one. And unfortunately, it was not the technical one, but it was the most difficult one. But over time, people started to appreciate the direction, and the culture is significantly changed. I can tell you, everyone is actually, there's stampede now. People want to implement ICT solutions.
Thanks for that. And I know we're running low on time now, and I see Tawanda, and then there's some questions from Oscar in the chat and Josephine as well. So perhaps, Tawanda, if you want to come on, and we'll take a group of questions at one time. If you could just indicate your question, then I'll mention the other two, and then we can have a quick wrap up on that. Tawanda.
Hello,
Okay.
thank you. Hello?
Okay, well, Oscar, no problem. Go ahead, Oscar.
Sorry, maybe or I'll wait for the other.
Well, I know
Hello?
Tawanda originally asked, well, she raised her hand, but I'm not seeing a hand raised anymore. So you can go ahead, Oscar.
Thank you, Xavier, for the opportunity, and thanks to Mr. Chafesuka for the nice presentation, sharing the experience of Mutare Municipality. So I have two questions. With this amazing digital system that is being used by Mutare for managing actually supporting municipal finance and different transaction, I wanted to ask, maybe the question is partly answered. First, I wanted to check if the system is fully developed by the local technical and financial resources. So, and I understand that it was actually developed by Mutare Municipality, and actually connected to that is to the question about how the system the interoperability of the system with other systems that maybe that are developed or that are managed by the central government or other agencies that maybe have information or data that are needed also for the Mutare Municipality system. So the question is to ask how the module were designed to actually to exchange data with the other systems, especially those managed by the central government. The second question, or the other question, is about what measures does the system offer as regard actually enabling the optimization of tax area recovery? Because it's also a challenge that in our case, like in Rwanda, some municipalities are having challenges to actually to devise mechanisms or measures to ensure a recovery for areas from past years, like for different decentralized tax. So if you can share some insight on what actually element of existing models that help Mutare to address such kind of challenges. These are the questions. Thank you again.
Thanks, Oscar. And before you respond, Mr. Chafesuka, let's just see if we can grab one more question from Josephine, if it's still a question.
Hi, madam. If there's an opportunity, Tawanda, I'm back. Maybe after Josephine.
Yes. Sorry, yes, Tawanda. Before Josephine, yes, Tawanda, quickly.
All right, that's fine. Thank you so much, madam facilitator, and I want to take this opportunity to congratulate Mutare City Council for the wonderful work being done, and the organizers of this event for actually creating a platform for us to interface with these administrators. It's rare to have an opportunity to chat with them. I was interested with how Mr. Blessing introduced himself. He made it clear that he graduated from finance to a level where he is now into political management. I think the successes that we are seeing are a clear testimony that he is managing the politics very, very well. So you would see from literature and from experience that the reason why sometimes local authorities struggle is because of the politics administration interface. The interface between the administrators and the councillors, the interface between the administrators and the residents, other stakeholders, and even the national government. But from the implementation of floods, it clearly shows that the municipality is managing those stakeholders well. So I'm not sure if there are some unique strategies that TC is interested in sharing so that other local authorities can also learn how to manage that kind of interface for a smooth implementation of local government reforms. Thanks, and back to you, Chair.
Thank you. And I know you're holding those notes, Mr. Chafesuka, so I'll just take one more question. He's the top, top town clerk here, so efficiency is there. Josephine, are you still there with your question?
Yes, I'm there. Thank you, moderator, for the opportunity and for organizing us well. Thank you, Mr. Town Clerk, Mutare Municipal Council, and your team for the great work done. And thank you for the presentation. Mine, I'm just asking as a point of clarification. Maybe he might have talked about it. Thank you for the number of projects that you've been able to come up with, utilizing the locally raised revenue, which is actually a booster to the communities that repay this subscription, the monies to the municipality. Maybe some just to ask, does the central government intervene or come in to support you when you're implementing these projects like the school constructions, the health facilities, the markets? All it is entirely done by the Mutare Municipal Council, and maybe they only come in like the supervisory role. You have fully the powers to implement, to come up with decisions and decide on these programs without the central government interfering, as in the interest of deepening decentralization. Thank you, moderator, and over to you.
Okay, back to you, Chafesuka. You can to respond to those questions. And I know we're limited on time, so. Okay.
Well, thank you. Yes, the structure of local authorities in Zimbabwe is such that local authorities have full power to come up with the proposals, get them approved by central government. Once approved, implementation is done by the local authority itself. So 90% of our budget is funded from local resources. About 10% should be coming from central government through devolution funds or fiscal transfers. Government maybe beyond approving loans. When the loans are approved, implementation is now, the full responsibility of the local authority. So predominantly, we are supposed to be self-sustaining institutions of government. That's the structure in Zimbabwe. Then the management of interface between stakeholders, how I have been able to manage this. Yeah, I think much of our success can also be attributed to, implementation of governance, good governance systems. ICT solutions being one of them, even being a major drive. But I think when you implement strong governance interventions, over time, residents start to appreciate the direction that you'll be taking. It's not an overnight thing. It takes time. And you just have to be strong because there are a lot of forces that work against such interventions. So I would say governance, being someone from finance, governance is part of the training. And, I'm a licensed accountant. And governance is part of, compliance issues that, so I've tried to make sure that we improve on governance. Sorry. And then the issue on development of the system, yes. We challenged our employees to first come up with a draft system they want, from a layman's point of view, from a user perspective, would say, if you are collecting revenue, or if you are doing bank reconciliations, for example, or if you are, allocating residential stands, what is a system that you want? What is it that it should deliver? So we'd then take those instructions and give to our software engineers, and they would then code. So, of course, there are changes that would come through along the way, but the beginning was to digitalize the very manual system that we're using. And then where it demands adjustment, those adjustments were coming along the way via the implementation, enforcement committee that was reviewing implementation. So yes, systems were developed within the lab, but they were developed by software engineers who were coming from our universities. Then, yes, the system allows for integration. For example, with debt collection system, it's a system that can be connected to any billing system, any other billing system, and any other assisting system, so that it will be talking to those systems in terms of giving updates. When you take a debt and the client is paid, your assisting system should update, the debtors account should be updated, and at the same time, your tracking system should update. So, the system allows for integration of and sharing of data with other systems. And the optimization, I think this also talks to the optimization of recovery of areas. The major strength is, when we came up with a debt collection system, the major weakness was we have had clients coming to register payment plans. But you then register thousands of payment plans. But how then do you track thousands of payment plans? To say this payment plan is due today, has it been respected, and is it up to date? Is the client following their payment plan? So that is the part that we then digitalized, and the system would then flag every day to say, these are the payment plans that are following due this week. Can you call this client? Can you follow up if there are issues? Can you update? Is there a need for a review of this payment plan? The system will then do that for you, and it greatly improved revenue collection. I'm sure I've answered the questions. You're on mute.
Yes. Thank you so much. Okay, you have as far as you're able to, and colleagues, I know the discussion is very rich, and I do see questions still coming. Unfortunately, however, we have run out of time. So, I would want to encourage any questions that you have, that you can also send them to me directly, and we will try and facilitate any additional feedback from the Mutare team, and of course, be able to send it back to you all as participants. From this session. So I really want to take this minute now to thank you very much, Mr. Chafesuka, and thank you all of you participants for being very, very forward in terms of your discussions and being open to being able to put forward any ideas and really check to see how far the work that Mutare is doing can even inform the work you're doing. I want to thank the Mutare City Council, also Leopold Buroma, and all the colleagues who have contributed in some kind of way with the questions or in any of the reflections today. And, there were a number of very important messages that came out of the session. Digitalization is still, for local government, is not really just about the technology for its own sake. At the core, it's really about strengthening the systems that have been underpinning your revenue administration or your management of finances, and the transparency, accountability, and the service delivery. And it's also useful to see that Mutare's experience is continuing to remind us that digital reform is not really just a one-off event. You can see it's a continuous journey. It requires that leadership, it requires that persistence, it requires that institutional buy-in, some kind of practical problem solving, and often it really it requires a willingness to start with whatever is possible and then to build progressively over time, as Leo had flagged earlier in the conversation. And thirdly, from today's discussion, it reinforced the value I see very much of peer learning between local governments. One of the reasons why CLGF and the CSCN continues to invest in this kind of exchange is just because the cities and the councils, you all are able to learn so much from one another's lived experience, not only from the successes, but also from the challenges and the trade-offs, and of course, all the different lessons along the way. And finally, I think today it has shown that there is very, very strong interest across the region in these sorts of practical exchanges on municipal finance, digitalization, whether it's around that revenue collection, the arrears management, the systems for payment, the internal controls, institutional coordination. It's wide, it's broad. From the CLGF side, we do see this form of clinic as a part of a broader ongoing conversation under the CSCN pilot. And we will continue to reflect on the issues that you have raised today as we continue to shape the next stages of the work we're doing now. So with that, let me once again thank you all for your participation, for your engagement. We're extremely grateful that you have been able to give your time, and we really look forward to staying in touch with all of you as this work progresses. We will share the slides. I saw the question come up about it. We will share the slides and the recording materials so you can go over it again at another time. Right? And with that, I would like to say thank you very much. And I would like to wish you all a very good rest of your day.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you very much. Bye.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity.